There's a moment that happens in almost every controlling relationship, and it's so small most people don't notice it happening to them. Someone says something slightly wrong, nothing dramatic. Maybe they ask an innocent question or they push back gently on a plan, and the room changes, the temperature drops, and without a single raised voice, everyone in that room adjusts their behavior to avoid it happening again. That's not respect, that's a trained response, and the person who trained it knows exactly what they're doing. Today we're breaking down the actual psychological mechanics of how people manufacture fear and call it respect, not so you can use it, but so you can spot it the moment it's aimed at you. Here's what most people get wrong. They think intimidation is about anger. Loud voices, threats, aggression. That's the amateur version, and it's actually the least effective one because it's obvious. People see it coming and they build defenses against it. The version that actually works, the version that gets called commanding a room or having an aura, doesn't look like aggression at all. It looks like calm, it looks like control. And that's exactly what makes it so hard to name when it's happening to you. By the end of this video, you'll be able to recognize the 3 specific tactics this pattern relies on. Understand the nervous system mechanics that make them so effective. And this is the important part. Understand why every single one of them eventually collapses on the person using them. 1. Strategic unpredictability. The first tactic is unpredictability, and it's the foundation everything else is built on. Human brains are wired to relax around consistency. If you know exactly how someone will react, your nervous system stops treating them as a threat. So the first move a manipulator makes, often without even consciously deciding to, is to become inconsistent. Warm one day, cold the next. Approving of something on Monday, furious about the same thing on Thursday. This isn't emotional instability. It's frequently a control mechanism because unpredictability keeps the other person's nervous system in a low-grade state of vigilance. You start scanning their face before you speak. You start rehearsing sentences in your head before you say them out loud. That hypervigilance feels like respect from the outside. From the inside, it's your amygdala treating a person like a threat. 2. The weaponized pause. The second tactic is silence. Specifically, silence used as a consequence rather than a communication tool. Most people use silence to process. Manipulators can use it as a punishment. The withdrawal itself becomes the message. You did something wrong, and now you don't get access to me until I decide you've suffered enough for it. Here's the mechanism that makes this so effective. Humans are a social species, and social exclusion activates the same neural pathways as physical pain. This isn't a metaphor, it's been shown in fMRI research on social rejection. So when someone weaponizes withdrawal, they're not just being cold. They're triggering something close to a genuine pain response. And your brain will do almost anything to make that pain stop, including abandoning your own boundaries. That's why people on the receiving end often describe walking on eggshells. They're not exaggerating. They're describing a nervous system that has learned silence equals danger. 3. Preemptive intimidation. The third tactic is the subtlest, and it's what actually produces that fear of disrespecting them, effect you might have heard described as charisma or presence. It's called preemptive intimidation, establishing early and often that there is a cost to crossing this person without ever having to spell it out directly. A sharp look, a pointed silence after someone says the wrong thing, a story told about what happened to the last person who challenged them. The genius of this tactic from a manipulator's perspective is that it does the work in advance. Nobody has to be punished in the moment because everyone's already decided the punishment isn't worth risking. That's not respect. That's a cost-benefit calculation your brain is running on a loop, and it is exhausting to live inside of. Why this always collapses? Here's the part that matters most, because it's the part most content on this topic leaves out. Fear-based compliance and genuine respect run on completely different psychological fuel. Respect is sustained by trust, and trust compounds. It gets stronger the longer it's tested and holds. Fear is sustained by threat, and threat has to keep escalating to keep working, because people adapt. What worked 6 months ago stops working, so the behavior has to intensify to produce the same effect. That's why these dynamics almost always have an expiration date. Either the person on the receiving end eventually stops adapting and leaves, or the manipulator has to escalate into territory that finally becomes impossible to ignore or excuse. Either way, what looked like commanding a room was never stable. It was a slow-motion collapse that just hadn't happened yet. Genuine respect, the kind that doesn't require any of these 3 tactics, tends to look almost boring by comparison. consistency instead of unpredictability, direct communication instead of weaponized silence, confidence that doesn't need a demonstration to prove itself. It's less cinematic. It's also the only version of it that actually lasts. So the next time you feel that specific tightness in your chest before you say something to someone, that instinct to pre-edit yourself to avoid a reaction, it's worth asking whether that's respect you're protecting or a fear response you've been trained into. And if you're noticing that pattern in yourself right now, in a relationship where you're the one adjusting to avoid someone else's temperature changes, the video I did on the specific signs of trained hypervigilance walks through exactly how to start unwinding that. That's the one to watch next.